In the South Korean city of Geongju, during the 2025 APEC Summit, an event took place that many analysts are already calling a defining moment for East Asia. Japan's recently elected Prime Minister, Sai Takaii, held her first official meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. To the casual observer, it seemed like a standard diplomatic exchange, a handshake, a few ceremonial remarks, and courteous smiles for the cameras. Yet beneath the surface, this encounter signaled something far more consequential, a subtle but unmistakable shift in Japan's long-term political trajectory. Official communiques reported that both leaders discussed issues of trade, regional security, and economic partnership. Xi Jinping underscored the necessity of stable and constructive relations, while Prime Minister Takaii emphasized the need to rebuild mutual confidence and steady the bilateral dialogue. On paper, it all appeared routine, but according to insiders, the tone behind closed doors was unlike any previous Japan-China meeting. Sources close to Japan's foreign ministry revealed that, for the first time in years, the two sides went beyond polite formalities and began engaging in genuine, detailed discussions about the future architecture of regional cooperation. Analysts from Nikkei Asia and the Financial Times noted that this meeting carried significance well beyond traditional diplomacy. Under growing economic strain and mounting pressure from Washington, Tokyo seems to be reconsidering its long-standing dependence on the United States. With Donald Trump back in office and his America First policy once again shaping global trade, Japan finds itself facing the same hardline tactics that once targeted China: steep tariffs, trade revisions, and tightened import rules. For decades, Japan has been America's closest ally in Asia, but now its industries are struggling under U.S. protectionism. Exports are slowing, corporate losses are rising, and Japan's government is caught between political loyalty to Washington and the economic realities at home. Beijing, sensing the moment, has responded with remarkable strategic precision. In the months leading up to the summit, China extended an array of proposals aimed at deepening cooperation with Japan, from joint energy infrastructure projects and scientific research programs to lowered tariffs for Japanese exports. Even more surprising, Beijing signaled readiness to stabilize tensions in disputed maritime zones, including the Senkaku Islands. Reports from within China's diplomatic circles suggest that military officials informally floated a memorandum, pledging that Chinese naval and air units would refrain from operating within Japan's claimed zones in the East China Sea, provided dialogue and cooperation continued. For a nation long accustomed to airspace violations and maritime incursions, this proposal was nothing short of groundbreaking. Unsurprisingly, this development raised alarms in Washington. According to Reuters, White House officials viewed the Xi Takaii handshake as a troubling signal. U.S. security advisors described it as a dangerous curve in Japan's policy, a moment where China might be tempting to purchase goodwill and erode the foundation of the Trans-Pacific Alliance. But in Tokyo, the perception was far more nuanced. After years of operating under American strategic influence, Japan's policymakers and business leaders are increasingly eager to define their own course. Political analyst Kazuo Sasaki of the Tokyo Institute for International Studies observed that Japan no longer wishes to serve merely as a supporting actor in another nation's agenda. It wants to become an independent player with agency in shaping regional affairs. And China, he adds, is offering precisely the incentives to make that transition possible. The economic context further amplifies this change. As the dollar strengthens and the yen continues to slide, Japanese companies are rapidly losing competitiveness abroad. A growing number of corporations are now exploring transactions in Yuan to cushion against currency instability. Behind closed doors in Geongju, financial discussions reportedly centered on a new mechanism for direct settlements in Yuan, effectively bypassing the dollar-based SWIFT system. While presented as a technical arrangement, experts suggest it could mark the beginning of a much larger transformation, a move away from dollar dominance in Asia-Pacific trade. 10 years ago, such an idea would have sounded impossible. Today, it's being openly debated in working groups and economic forums, with some economists calling it the early stage of the Pacific's yuanization. All of this unfolds amid a wider strategic recalibration. China continues to strengthen its military footprint across the Western Pacific, though now with a noticeably measured approach. Regular naval exercises near Japanese waters have become a fixture, not as a show of aggression, but as a deliberate demonstration of restraint and control. It's a calculated balance, maintaining the capability for deterrence while signaling readiness for peace. In the end, what transpired in Geongju was more than just another diplomatic encounter. It may well represent the quiet turning point of Japan's post-war identity, a nation beginning to assert its autonomy after decades of alliance-driven policy. For China, it's a masterstroke of diplomacy. For the United States, a wake-up call. And for the Asia-Pacific region, it could mark the dawn of a new geopolitical era, where old alignments are questioned and new partnerships begin to take shape. In exchange for cooperation, Beijing extends something far more subtle than a written agreement, a promise of economic stability, market access, and the assurance that prosperity can endure, so long as the seas remain calm and loyalty runs deep. This unspoken trade, peace in return for partnership, is what many analysts quietly believe was forged behind the closed doors of that meeting. But for Japan, such a choice is not merely strategic, it is historical, emotional, and deeply personal. For nearly 8 decades, Japan's destiny has been intertwined with that of the United States. American military bases have stood as both a shield and a reminder, a symbol of protection, but also of dependence. Yet now, the winds of change are rising. The image of America as an unwavering pillar of stability is beginning to fade, replaced by a new uncertainty. In the halls of Tokyo's foreign ministry, conversations that once seemed unthinkable are taking place openly. Diplomats now speak of multipolar diplomacy, of a future in which Japan no longer follows but leads, charting its own course through a shifting world order. One senior advisor, speaking to NHK, put it bluntly: "We have entered a new reality. China is no longer merely a rival to outmaneuver. It is a neighbor, and the region's future cannot exist without it." His words, quiet but direct, captured a sentiment that is rapidly spreading through Japan's political elite. And in Washington, they landed with the force of a thunderclap. Following the meeting between Prime Minister Sai Takaii and President Xi Jinping, Donald Trump took to the podium, reminding the world that America protects Japan, and that this protection comes at the cost of the American taxpayer. His message was clear, but behind the bravado, concern is growing in Washington's inner circles. Reports from Bloomberg and Politico reveal that the administration is deeply unsettled. The fear is simple: if Japan begins to tilt toward China, the cornerstone of America's presence in East Asia could crumble. The timing only amplifies the symbolism. The Geongju meeting took place just days after Takai's tense exchange with Trump at the same summit. The Financial Times described their conversation as strained. Trump demanded that Japan increase imports of U.S. gas and narrow its trade surplus. Takai, calm and composed, refused to bend. And then, days later, the world watched as she shook hands with Xi Jinping, cameras flashing. That handshake, polite, deliberate, but unmistakable, carried a message of its own. Japan was exploring other doors. Observers across the region took note. This was not routine diplomacy. It was a shift in the tectonic plates of geopolitics. Beneath the surface of polite statements and rehearsed smiles, a slow realignment is taking place. For Beijing, it is an opening to establish itself as the economic nucleus of Asia. For Tokyo, it is the beginning of a journey toward independence, a chance to define its own path, no longer as Washington's shadow, but as an equal power shaping the region's destiny. Whether Trump can halt this momentum remains uncertain. According to Japanese media, both delegations continued discussions after the summit, moving from words to blueprints, plans for massive infrastructure partnerships, shared investments in green technology, and even talks of Japan joining aspects of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Publicly, both sides call it pragmatic cooperation, but beneath that label lies something far more profound: the construction of a new balance of power, one where Beijing becomes the gravitational center and Washington's dominance begins to wane. If this trajectory holds, the consequences could be historic. For the first time since the end of World War II, Japan may step out from under America's strategic umbrella and navigate its own course. Such a transformation would redraw the map of the Asia-Pacific region, altering alliances and creating new lines of influence. It would mean that the old order, built on American guarantees and Cold War assumptions, is slowly giving way to a multipolar reality, one where no single power dictates the future. Behind the photographs, the handshakes, and the staged smiles, something far deeper is unfolding. The architecture of global politics itself is being rewritten, not through war or revolution, but through diplomacy, trade, and quiet calculation. Ironically, the spark for this transformation was lit by the very man who promised to restore American dominance. If Donald Trump cannot present Japan with a vision that matches China's offer, whether through economic incentives, technological collaboration, or renewed military guarantees, then his America First doctrine could achieve the opposite of what it intended. Instead of securing America's leadership, it could drive one of its closest allies into the embrace of its greatest competitor. And if that happens, the world will witness a turning point. A new chapter in the history of the Asia-Pacific, where the alliances that once seemed unbreakable begin to fracture, and the old world order, shaped in the ashes of war, slowly dissolves into something new. The tide is shifting, the center of gravity is moving, and for the first time in generations, Japan stands at the edge of a choice that could reshape not just its future, but the balance of power across the entire planet.